Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. The challenge of change is what I've been known for talking about around the world as a presentation that unfolds and gears itself up to the immediate future in which we find ourselves. And people book me, I think, to speak at conferences because they have an idea that they were taught perhaps by their parents, that the more things change, the more they seem to stay the same, but there's stuff going on, what do we do about it? Your parents taught you that phrase because they wanted to be the best parents ever, and they'd learned it from their parents, your grandparents, who at the time when this phrase was appropriate in your grandparents' era were absolutely correct. In a world that moved incredibly slowly, the more things changed, the more they stayed the same. However, fundamentally, what we've seen in terms of life now is massive, fundamental change that is affecting every single one of us. In 1785, an experiment was done, sadly, on a frog in a pot. It was learned back then, over 250 years ago, that if you put a frog into a pot of cold water and gently heated it by less than 1 degree at a time until the water boiled, the frog wouldn't see the change coming and perished. And we've got to realize that we cannot find ourselves today like the frog in the pot. The forces of change, the 5 of them that have driven our lives, are these: from computing to communication to connectivity to collaboration and finally convergence. These things have changed our life and destroyed that phrase in our own lifetimes. Because if you go back and take a look at them, the era of computing really kicked off in the 1970s, and just prior to that in 1969, when man first put those footsteps on the moon. Mission control, oh man, back at Mission Control, NASA's headquarters in Cape Canaveral. They had the most expensive computer system ever devised and installed at their headquarters to make that moon landing possible. IBM boasted that they had 6 megabytes of power at Mission Control. The lander, the Eagle that you can see on the image there, landed with less than 64 kilobytes of onboard computing connectivity. If you have a toaster, ladies and gentlemen, that knows the difference between frozen and ordinary bread, your toaster today has more computing power than what Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed on the moon with. 64 gigs. That's a USB mini toaster, by the way, that you can download today off the web for about £9. Communication in the 80s, mobile phones back then had a talk time of 30 minutes. They weighed a kilogram. There were 5 million of them in the world. Well, today, everyone has the mobile ubiquitous phone with a talk time of over 20 hours, and 7 billion of us carry them. My own Acer mobile phone works in 3 continents simultaneously, as I just discovered in Europe last week. It is remarkable. And today we're selling mobile phones, not the 5 million by the end of the 80s. We're selling 5 million mobile phones a day today. Connectivity, well, the internet. We all need it. Wi-Fi is a prerequisite in our lives. Do you know that in the 90s, you were on a 14K dial-up modem? You might have been one of the 16 million that had the internet. And today, of course, since the 1990s, we're now taking 4 megabyte per second broadband download speeds, and over 3 billion of us are connected. And then collaboration. It started with social media, MySpace, first out of the blocks, but then Facebook. By 1995, 150 million users. Today, of course, everyone's working the same process. Everyone's using everything. 2 billion of us connected to social media, multi-platform, and it's all led to convergence. Today, everything is now wherever you are, and that's happened since man landed on the moon. Convergence brought all of this together, and what it now means is that today, the more things change, the faster change happens. How do we gear for that? How do we grow with it? A senior executive at Google 2 weeks ago said, innovation that used to take a generation now happens in weeks or months. What are you doing about it in your business? Where are you going to bring it forward? How are you going to win? That's what I talk about at your conferences. The point of change, the projects, the objectives, the information, the networks, the stuff that rolls together. You've got to take your business towards 2020. I look forward to speaking at your next conference and helping your people buy into the reality of how to get there. Thank you very much indeed. Good morning.